Welcome back to the Authenticity Calling podcast. I'm your host, Ralitza, and it is another beautiful day on this podcast with a very special guest, Dr. Gates. You are such a soulful entrepreneur. You are such a beautiful soul. Thank you for coming into. I think we met on the Mystic and the Medicine when that activation happened. We are so much more than medicine. And so I just want to welcome you. I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for sharing your gifts with the world.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Anytime I can share, talk, and have fun, I'm down.
I love that. I love it. And you know what? It's not common in our medical world of having fun. And even the company that I work for is Doctors of BC. And in our prior strategic priorities, we even had a hashtag of "We are seriously fun." And we moved away from that. And that actually shifted the culture. Even though we still have that energy in us and the way that we work, it's become a lot more serious. And so there was a momentum and an impact that we had when we were seriously fun that was so much more juicy. It was so much more easeful. It was just like you show up and you do the thing that you're so passionate and inspired about. And it's supposed to be fun. And so when we take fun away, I feel like we lose a part of ourselves. So I just,
Yeah.
every time I talk to you, every time I connect with you, I'm reminded of like, oh, right, it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be exciting and expansive and juicy and like, it's such an important part of our human existence.
I agree. And, if you're really doing the work, like if you are really honestly going in, it's not always fun. But
No.
when you
Yeah.
get your wisdom, when you
Ah,
when you decide how do I want to move forward, you have to have some type of emotion that's gonna drive what you're creating from a place that you like being in. And,
mhm.
one of the things that I really started paying attention to was my name. My name means joy. It means Father, source of joy. And so, if that's my mission, because I think we're very connected to our names and why we're
Yes.
here, then if
Yes.
that's why I'm here, or why, whatever your name may be, it's going to give you some ideas about your purpose. You got to try to embody that as much as you can. But what I
Mm.
didn't want to do is to, I can show up here and be all bubbly and wonderful, but there's the other side that you have that ain't so cute. Like I was crying in the middle of the night, moving energy and
That's
feeling
right.
anxiety, from all of this shift that we're happening.
That's
So
right.
when you
That's
say
right.
authenticity, I want to make sure we honor both, but at the same time,
Mm.
you got to have some fun.
Absolutely. And I think we need to prioritize it too. If we're coming from the space of, in the physician world, we don't talk about having fun, right? I mean, there are places and spaces we go into that can be fun. But I really
Mhm.
don't think it's a priority for anyone, truly. And I think that's
No.
why we're in this space of burnout right now, as for the masses, because we
Mhm.
don't prioritize that. We don't even prioritize going to the bathroom or feeding ourselves, if we're being really honest. We
Yeah.
don't even, meet our basic requirements for living. But something you said was really important just now, and I just want to highlight and elevate to anyone who's listening how important it is to actually take personal responsibility for our energetic hygiene.
Oh,
And what you said about moving energy last night and that it's not always cute, it can be really, really ugly. It can be so challenging. It can be so like feel like we're dying. And truly, that is old energy, our
yeah. Mhm.
old identities dying. That's the death and rebirth experience of that paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute necessity if we're going to move into that next level, into that next embodiment, into that calling forward. A lot of people use the word imposter syndrome. I don't love that because
Mhm.
you can't be an imposter of yourself, but there are parts of old versions of you that don't serve the version you're stepping into. And so it's like that growth edge of releasing old patterns, of letting go of, certain habits. And sometimes it's people, and that can be really difficult for some people, right? Is actually, blocking do not disturb on the phone. Like whatever it is we need to do, get over the guilt, the shame, the all those low vibrational frequencies that tend to keep us stuck in our old versions of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and really step into that evolution. So if you have anything to say about that, I think it would be so much in service.
Yeah, I'm like, what part? Okay, so
Yeah. Awesome.
like where do we start? Because my story you talked about medicine is actually interesting. It'll be 10 years this December when I put in my notice. And
Mm,
I had been in practice for
wow.
10 years. And so when you talked about, the fun piece, the soul draining parts, it was such it's sort of an oxymoron because I was living my dream. I was doing what I always was called to do, or at least that
Yeah.
was the first leg of it. And when you are burnt out, when you're tired, when you don't have time to go to the bathroom, when you're busy, juggling. I was primary care, so I was juggling
Mhm.
4 and 5 rooms sometimes, with people there going through things. And then the work would just never end.
That's
It was
right.
like you took it home and, or you stayed late or you gobbled up your lunch, and it just wasn't healthy for me
That's right.
to live that way. And so it was soul draining. I was,
Yeah.
in the length of time that I've been out now, I've had a lot of time to reflect. And it's
Mm,
interesting listening to my story over these last 10 years change,
yeah.
from how I felt when I first came out and then how I am now. I have walked that grief, and
Mm,
and I'm grieving in different ways now than
mm,
I was back then. Because,
mhm.
so we were talking, you and I, about what do we want this energetic space to feel like today. And you said something like transitioning with grace.
Yes.
So, and there's a lot of transition happening now,
Mhm.
transformation, all of that, the
Mhm.
transes
A lot of change,
happening,
yeah.
a
A
lot
lot
of
of change.
changes.
Yeah.
Right. And so shifting that identity is been one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But now it's almost like my friend and I talk about going back to that time frame and picking her up, like picking up that
Mm,
version of who you were and bringing her into the present and being
mm,
like, you're okay. You made the right choice. There are still tons and tons of people out there to help you, but I mean, or for you to help.
yeah.
But when you are, in it, you can't see it that clearly. You
Mhm.
just know there's something in you that's supposed
Mhm.
to be doing something different.
Yes.
And so I've had to learn that when you are experiencing those new identities or going through a quantum leap
Mhm.
experience, there is grief between who you
Mhm.
were and who you're becoming. The in between space carries lots of grief. And
Mm,
I guess, or shedding, if you
yeah.
don't really want to use the word grief, it
Yeah.
literally is shedding. And so I was
Releasing,
doing a
yeah.
lot of that. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. So
Yeah.
10 years.
Wow. Well, first, congratulations. I think it's
Yeah.
a huge milestone to celebrate that you were able to even step out. And I think for a lot of people that are listening right now, what's coming through is just to share that leaving is not always the answer. Sometimes it's evolving the way that you practice, right? I'm very hopeful. I work in healthcare transformation and I'm hoping we keep some of the some of the providers in the system because a lot of people are leaving, but I don't think that's always necessarily the answer. I'm not saying that it's not.
Right.
However, for the people that are providing patient care that are hearing this and that may be feeling a call to shift things in a way that is actually going to create a container for you where you can support yourself, where you can and you said, there are people that we can help. But what you actually said was there are people that can help you. And I want to bring that back. There are people that can help you because a lot of us as healthcare providers, we're the martyrs. We're going to do it on our own. We don't come with business acumen. We don't come. And then there's like these systems that we're supposed to work in that are actually very much about business. They are very much about so many things that we're not specialists in. A lot of physicians are being called into leadership spaces. It's not their zone of genius, but they're kind of like they have to be everything to everyone. And so that creates burnout because you're constantly pushing a growth edge instead of just really owning that you are whole exactly as you are. And it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to show up and do it messy. Like you're going to get there. We're all of us in this evolving space. I want to normalize not being perfect. I want to normalize the growth edge. I want to normalize learning, while we
Mm-hmm.
still show up in our wholeness. Just because
Yeah.
it's something that's new doesn't mean that, we have to push through our own needs in order to show up for the thing. And I think that's what initiated sort of that interest in talking about doing it with grace. It's actually grace for ourselves that we're meant to have. And actually being
Yeah.
able to say, no, thank you, or can we please reschedule? Because it's in energetic integrity for me to feel rested and inspired and excited for this podcast. And if I do it at a time where I'm feeling pulled in different directions, I'm going to show up and feel like, okay, now we have to rush. Now I'm showing up in a different energy where it's not actually serving the impact of this space. And I think as physicians, when you show up in the clinic, and when you're holding space for a client and a patient, and that you have 10 or 15 minutes, it's being able to expand that time to be fully present with them for those 10 or 15 minutes. And we don't really see it that way in healthcare. We don't talk about expanding time and being present and, really slowing down, and first and foremost, coming whole as we are, feeding ourselves, nurturing our soul, making sure we talk about filling the cup and overflowing. Well, if our cup is full of holes, if we're exhausted, if we're drained, if we're having arguments with our family members and or business partners and or our MOAs and our staff, we can't. It's not a container that's in integrity. We're not showing up whole. And so, how can we actually fill our cup to overflow? So, it starts with us giving ourselves permission to say, today is not a day that I can show up in service to others. I need to show up for myself
Mm-hmm.
first and foremost. We talked this week about taking about mental health and taking days for your mental wellness before it becomes your mental illness. So there's a lot that's in the space right now in the collective where we're becoming
Mm-hmm.
aware, but it's taking that awareness and actually taking aligned action to create the container for our wellness. That's what activates the healer within. And that's what's really like, there's so much that's coming through now. You are such a
Mm-hmm.
powerful portal, Gayla. I'm so grateful for you. But yeah, so many things that I wouldn't have the audacity to
It's
say,
so
I'm just
funny.
able to say right now. So thank you for that. But tell us a little bit, yeah, like what comes through for you
Mm-hmm.
in all of this. That was a lot. And I'd love to know about your background too, and about what that's all about.
Yeah. I mean, the word soul, you can see there. The when I thought about this term, it came to me as sister path soul, like a sister on the
Mm,
path of her soul, a sister, right?
mm,
And one of the things that when you speak about grace, if I can say, I've learned several things, the pearls of wisdom in this experience of mine, after leaving and going through all the different transitional things I've done and experienced. But everyone's soul is unique. And this is the
mm,
one thing that I want everyone that listens to really understand is that when people say, God gives you that dream or it's being spoken directly to you and it's not being broadcast all over the place. So it's like this stirring was happening for me that I needed to go. Like I couldn't quite figure out why,
mhm,
but my mother had gotten sick during that time frame, and I was taking care of her. And after she passed, I was an only child, so it was just me now trying to figure out how am I going to do this. And I go back and look at photos from that time frame, and I was so unhealthy, but I was
mm,
so successful career wise. And
mhm,
everyone would be like, well, you need to lose weight, lose weight. Why are you gaining all this weight? I was emotionally eating. I found out I was an empath. There
mhm,
was so much going on with me, that I probably wasn't the best version of myself. I was in survival mode to the umpteenth, like way up here, survival. I mean, and not even realizing that I was so unhealthy, but I was so
mhm,
dedicated and so smart, and I knew how to take care of my patients. But it just wasn't the environment for me.
Mhm.
I didn't feel like I had the creativity I wanted.
Mhm.
I couldn't, really dress the way I wanted to dress and feel.
Mhm.
I didn't, I couldn't really change my schedule. And I couldn't always decide who I was going to be working with. Like it was just so much that I felt like I needed in my life that I did not have. So it just, I don't know. I just knew it clicked in me that it was time. And
Mhm.
so there are people out there who's feeling that. They also sometimes say you have to jump before the parachute comes.
Mhm.
And that's what I did. Not that that's correct for everyone.
Yeah.
But I tell you, one of the tools which that I learned about was human design. And when I started looking
Mhm.
at my energetics and what I'm here to do and how my energy is meant to be done, and how it's supposed to be expressed,
Yes.
I don't sit in cycles very long.
Yes.
And I used to beat up on myself, like, well, why don't you want to do it the way everyone else is doing it? And that
Mhm.
goes back to medical school because after med school, I took a year off. And instead of going right into residency, I was like, I need a break. And
Mhm.
everybody freaked out. So I've always sort of, you know, been on a different path. I've truly
Mhm.
been on my path, which was very
Mhm.
different from maybe my mother's path or my parents' path or the people who raised me and, or even our mentors and the people that taught us and helped us, trained us. Like,
Mhm.
I think I was the only one that didn't go that when they had match day.
Yep. Yep.
And on my graduation, on my our graduation bulletin, it says traveling.
Ah.
And so I literally, everybody else had, where they matched and what hospital they're going to be going or what program. And it was like Dr. Gayla Gates traveling. It's the best they could do. And I remember the dean, she was a woman, and she asked me, she was like, why would you do this? Like, what's,
Mhm.
is something wrong? Like, what? And I was like, you have no idea what
Mhm.
it's felt like for me
Mhm.
because I was going through grief. My father had passed away
Mhm.
when I was in college. And so I didn't grieve him, I just kept going. And
Wow.
so all of that I feel like compounded on me.
Mhm.
And I just needed breaks. I needed
Mhm.
breaks. I found out I was a projector. So if there's anybody listening that's into human design
Mhm.
and found out I was, a projector, it made sense to me
Mhm.
why I wasn't, on the same path as maybe the majority of, the people in the group or in the profession itself. And I
Mhm.
was just always tired. Even on the
Mhm.
weekend, I just could never refill. When I would go
Yeah.
on vacation, I would want to travel and do
Yeah.
things. I was so tired on the vacations,
Right.
And so something had to give.
Mm.
And that's when I said, okay, you know, I didn't know if I was going to come back. I just knew at that time it was just time to move. So
Mm.
I have allowed myself to be open to what spirit wants me to do next or what I'm
Mhm.
called to do, what my
Mhm.
soul says is time to do next.
Yes.
And so right now it's working with people and doing things like this that I love. And for me during COVID, it was the best time because I learned how to work on Zoom. And
Mhm.
it's so nurturing to my energy. So I can
Mm.
meet with multiple people. If, telehealth wasn't a big thing for me when we were, practicing, but
Yeah.
telehealth probably would have been a good thing for me.
Right.
So I think they're bringing this full circle are
Mhm.
some new different ways of practicing now that's more
Mhm.
creative than it was back, for us that people
Mhm.
can do. So you have,
Mhm.
so much more talk about physician burnout, talk because my class was one of the first class to experience the 80-hour work week. Like we were kind of coming into
Mm.
that before it was, you work all day when you were post call. And
Right.
there were a lot of resident friendly rules, like ways to help preserve our residents
Mhm.
coming on board while I
Mhm.
was training.
Mhm.
And we were also part of the group to bring in electronic medical records. So that
Wow.
was new and with pay for performance. So there was a lot of
Mm.
transition in those groups of people who trained, in the early 2000s. And, that's when a lot of these things that we have commonplace now,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
we're starting to come on board. So, perhaps it'll get better
Mhm.
for those that are still working in the profession. But I just knew that I was here to do something different.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for, again, holding the grace for yourself to do what you needed to do, right? Because when
Hmm.
we wear ourselves out, we're useless to everybody. And so, taking that path, and it sounds like it was even more of a path of resistance for you because everyone would do exactly what they were expected, straight from medical school into residency, into licensed practice. And it's such a path of, there's so little gratitude that is offered and given, I think, for to physicians. So I want to highlight that if you have a physician, if you know a physician, if you are listening out there, and even if you are a physician, like feed back into your community, appreciate your fellow physicians, know that you're actually not alone. Reach out and ask for help. There are many physician health programs that are out there that are meant to support physicians in practice. If you're feeling burnt out, it is your personal responsibility to shift that. So take personal responsibility, have grace with yourself. Showing up with an empty cup is actually not serving anyone. And so recognizing that right now we're at a deficit, we're at a financial deficit, we're at a human resource deficit, we're at a deficit in many different ways in healthcare right now. And we're really trying to figure out like how do we support the system in working. And really we need to double down on what we do have, and we need to be able to optimize the systems we do have. And team-based care is such a thing, but I don't think it's fully implemented or optimized. There
Hmm.
are so many amazing human beings working in healthcare that if they showed up in their zone of genius, and if the system actually elevated that zone of genius and really supported people to do the thing that they're really passionate about and good at doing, we will be in a system that works so well. And we're not going to be in this space of like scarcity and lack of, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough physicians, we have way too many. It's like, if everyone takes personal responsibility, number one, the patients take care of their own healing journey and actually take responsibility to do the things that make them well instead of make them ill, including lifestyle changes, including like, the preventative measures. But then we also focus, internally on what do we need to feed to our soul, as you did so gracefully step away to do the thing that you needed to do for yourself so that you could actually step into service in the way that your soul was called, and like you said, so uniquely. And that's such a
Hmm.
beautiful thing when we do that, because then we can truly step into that God-given mission, that universally aligned and supported unique space that we're meant to take up
Yep.
in the world.
Right.
Um, and so I know you shared too about, um, about the container that you're creating. If you can speak a little bit to that, because I think that is the transition of, owning a new version of ourselves that feeds our soul first. But then also for those people who maybe have had someone who's passed away, again, I think this does really serve, whether it's an old version of ourselves that we're that we're finally willing to grieve, or a person that we've lost. But I think the offering that you have is so, so generous, and it gives
Hmm.
back to ourselves and then the community we're asked to serve. But if you feel called to share about that, would be
Yeah, sure.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I learned through I went to shaman training from a few different teachers, a few different shamans with
Mm,
different thought processes, different wisdom. A lot of shamanism is about wisdom. It's about,
mm,
learning how to walk your own unique journey your way with no map. You're creating something new in the world,
mhm,
and you are wounded and, emotionally, going through things, and then you find the wisdom in your journey, the highest version of what you've been through, and speak to that wisdom and become that version of you healing, and helping others because you've walked the walk.
mhm,
So grief has been one of my teachers. It's been one of the ones that I've experienced on multiple ways, and most humans have. It's not that I'm any different. I just feel like I'm supposed to use it to teach from because I
Mm,
was there when my mother transitioned and took her last breath on my birthday. I was
mm,
there when my father took his last breath. I was there with my aunt who took her last breath, and they all
mm,
had cancer. They all were in, chronic pain, as many people with cancer have towards the end of their journey. They're in pain, their body hurt, their bones hurt from spreading of their disease and things. And then I was there with my dog when a dog that I was taking care of transitioned. So I felt that spirit leave the body. Like I felt that
mm,
energy shift in that moment with people that I adored. And I think the physician training in me, the medicine person, the death doula, or however you want to describe it, is there in that moment and um, standing in power, right, for that person. But it's the moments after. Actually, it's not even that because your house is usually full of people and they bring you fried chicken and mac and cheese and all kinds of stuff you don't need to be eating. So
mm,
once everybody leaves, there is the quiet times.
mm, mm,
They're the moments a month or two later, and then you're in like this holiday season, for instance,
mm,
where you're trying to put the pieces back together, and the people that you used to go to for support are no longer here. And
mm,
had I not had a coach and a friend, or
mhm,
understood the power of coaching and understood how it feels to have someone stand with me, I don't know what I would have done.
mhm,
So, we're given these tools to help us along the way, but you don't always know why. Like, I didn't know why I was spending 4 years having meetings with my coach every Thursday for 4 years. And I'm coaching her and she's coaching me and we're friends. And, we're really like digging these weeds out. I didn't know why I was doing that.
yeah,
But now I'm at a place where I can say it's time to help some people. So I was trying to figure out what would be a good offer to provide around this time.
mhm,
And I got some help from another friend. I'm like, look, I got 8,000 things that I can talk about. What can I
yeah,
what is it that I'm being called to do now?
yeah,
And that is to offer space for people who have lost loved ones or
mm,
lost something. It may not be a person,
mhm,
but the mama wound is what came to me because
mhm,
I had done that work before. It's healing our mama wounds. And
mm,
there's something about not having your mom around during this time of year that, for those who have either had their mothers already transition out of the body or are actively going through something with their
mm,
mothers,
mhm,
whether it be, a distance from an argument, or y'all don't see eye to eye, that's
mhm,
still grief. Or if they really, they are actively transitioning right now, they're still there, but they're very sick, you
mhm,
know. Or this is your first year without your mom or without your, someone you've been very close to in that divine feminine space. It could be a godmother or a
mhm,
mentor.
mhm.
um, or if you're like me and it's been, since 2014, so 11 years, and
Wow.
you're still not quite, solid all the time, or you are more solid than you used to be, but, it's different. There's longer times
Mhm,
now. Or,
mhm,
maybe you lost your mom, but now there's another friend or family member that you used to go to that you don't have. So I was
mhm,
called to, hold space and help those people navigate this time of the year. And I'm going to be
mhm,
having ceremonies or workshops, support spaces. We can do some meditations together.
mhm.
The Healing the Mama Wound ceremony is a beautiful workshop space that I've created, and I'm, going to have people joining that.
Yeah.
And then if anyone wants to explore one-on-one experience
Mhm,
after that, like a one-on-one container of
mhm,
guidance, we
mhm,
can work together. We can talk about that. So that's really what
mhm,
I'm looking to do, is to offer some spaces and then obviously offer that one-on-one time, because I needed
mhm.
one-on-one. I
Yes.
didn't really benefit from a group
Yeah.
as much. And a lot of people need that because you need
Mhm,
safety. You have to
mhm,
feel safe and,
mhm,
vulnerable and coming from the medical field, it's like suck it up,
Yep.
and be tough all the time. And,
Yeah,
you can't express those emotions.
that's
And
right.
it took so much rewiring for me to even be able
Mm-hmm.
to talk about needing
Mm-hmm.
help.
Yep.
Um, vulnerability is not our jam.
Right.
And so
Yep.
so learning how to, truly be vulnerable has been a muscle I've had to
Mm-hmm.
build.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what my mission is for the next few weeks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And there's so much wisdom and beauty of what you shared, and what comes through to really elevate is number one, what you shared about, reaching out to someone to support you. It's so powerful, whether it's a friend, a colleague, a mentor. But if you're really in that space and want to shift, right? Change resistance is a real thing. And if
Mm-hmm.
we're with people who maintain the drama of the current issue, there's a lot of people who show up just to maintain the drama. And it's not necessarily that they want to, that's all they know how to do, right? In their own system. Coaches, therapists, support workers, people in this space, light workers, shamans, we've been through the mud, we've been through, our
Yep.
own, we've shown up for ourselves, and we continue to do so. I think that's one of the most important differences of being a physician versus being in this coaching space. As a coach who's in integrity with what they're offering, they're actually doing their work every single day to make sure
Right.
that they're not bringing their limitation into the container that they're holding for others. So that's a really important difference. And I think that's, I guess, my calling with Up to Health Global is to call physicians forward to actually turn off the switch of showing up for others and turn on the switch of showing up for themselves, because we
Mm-hmm.
pick up so much from our patients every single day. And if we don't take it home and work it, when we work it, we actually alchemize the energy and we're helping the people out there as well. And that's something we don't talk about. But I think what you said, and I want to really highlight and elevate, I think that's for another time. But what I really want to highlight and elevate is how important it is to be in a container with someone who can hold that energetic frequency of where we're meant to step into, right? We can't do that
Mm-hmm.
on our own. We can show up for ourselves to be vulnerable and grieve and, shift the energy internally once we learn the tools of how to even do that. But having someone who can teach us the tools is so important. You don't have to stay stuck looping in your suffering. You don't have to stay stuck in your grief. You don't have to be alone, right? And I think there's a lot of people right
Yeah.
now that are feeling alone, right? And
Yes.
so I think it's number one, it's elevating that you are never, ever, ever alone. You have spirit tribe out there that is here to support you on your mission, support you on your vision. It doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg. There are so many people, so many coaches that are so generously giving free sessions, that are offering spaces for you to step into. And when you invest in yourself, right? We spend so much money, especially in the professional world. We spend so much money on investing in our systems, in our marketing, in our staff, in our all the other places, but we rarely actually invest in ourselves. And the people that are doing really, really well, they know the value of investing in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to elevate that when we do actually choose a container, and again, sometimes you have to shop around to really feel what fits well for you. But when you do actually see the value of investing and taking that time to actually show up for yourself and actually invest in yourself, it actually makes such a huge difference to have someone that can hold you in that container of what's possible for you and your soul aligned path and your journey. And so, yeah, that sister path soul is so resonant and so beautiful, because that is what we're all called to claim. And yeah,
Right.
being in that grieving space, it's so beautiful to have that divine feminine, like that mother, that unconditional love, that space of, okay, it's
Mm-hmm.
safe actually, even in my own system, my own nervous system, to be vulnerable, to show
Yeah.
up and say, I'm actually having a really hard day today, and this is what's heavy on my heart. I don't think there are a lot of spaces that we can do that. And especially as healers, like we have that kind of like little bit of codependency thing that we show up for other people before we show up for ourselves and we self-sacrifice and we martyr and we, and so that's thank God, because that's what created the, I think, the healthcare system to begin with, which is like I'm grateful for. And we can show up in a different way where we're not giving ourselves away, where we are asking for help and where we're showing up for ourselves. That builds such a beautiful system of wellness rather than disease maintenance that actually helps us to move to the other side where we are actually full and overflowing, where we're really showing up in our passion and in our purpose, and really being able to like push that growth edge of our potential. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, you're right. It is one of those times, and being in the divine feminine to hold that space. A lot of us didn't grow up with mothers that were compassionate, or we weren't taught how to have grace with
Mhm.
others and or ourselves because we didn't see it. I mean, we know about neural mirroring and how we learn from what we're around, do as I say, not as I
Mhm.
do, but really you're always going to do what you see. So it's just so
Yeah.
important to have that mentor to show us what grace looks like.
Right. And forgiveness, because when you were talking about that archetype of a mom that, and you go back to thinking about, what your grandmother went through, what your mother went through, what you're going through, what your daughters and your aunts and sisters, there's a huge ancestral component to this work. And, the one, there's usually one or two or so that come through the family to move through that. And there are a lot of people talking now, which I really am excited for and grateful for, to heal that intergenerational trauma or those patterns and
Mhm.
move forward, with it. And the mama wound is a special one because we bear children,
Mhm.
and so there's that piece that makes us unique as women,
Mhm.
and how we're created, how, our
Mhm.
bodies, and so much that we have gone through and experienced just by being women. And so
Mhm.
there's, a lot of forgiveness. And one of the things that I think is so important that I've learned is the both and story.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned through my training, is through shaman training, is
Mhm.
holding the both and that I
Yeah.
can express my wounding or whatever it is I need help with and still love and care for and be honoring to that
Mm.
mother, but I didn't
Mm.
appreciate all these things. And, that version of me needs to speak that. So when I
Mm.
have these ceremonies, I usually have them small. There's usually 10 to 15 people, they're not real
Mhm.
big. So when people want to share,
Mhm.
they have sacred space to share those more intimate moments,
Mhm.
which has meant a lot to me to offer. And
Mhm.
so, I plan on having multiple ones because I'm feeling like there's going to be quite a few people who need this.
Yes.
But yeah, I really think about the safety, the sacredness
Mhm.
of someone, being able to truly express this and feel like they can. And there may
Mhm.
be people out there that want to come to be there for those other women. So
Yeah.
you can come too. It doesn't have to be for, someone who's just really going through it. You may just want to come and honor your mom. You may want to
Yeah.
just come and say, I'm showing up for my family today.
Mhm.
And we would appreciate that grounded, healed energy in the container, in the space as well.
Mm.
So, and if someone wants to just kind of get a feel for it, I do have a Facebook group that you can join. There's mostly empaths in there because though that's really the group of people that gravitate towards me because I'm emotionally empathic.
Mhm.
So, they can come and just, kind of get a feel for things. And
Mhm.
if they feel like they want to be in one of our ceremonies, they can.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. Thank you, Gayla, for
Thank
doing this
you.
work. This is so, so, so important. And it's such a transitional moment right now, as you said. Like we're really coming out of, this it's a birth canal, really, of recreating the new way of being. And, these conversations are so common nowadays around this transitional space of, stepping into that next level of that calling of, stepping into what we're creating together collectively. It's a co-creation. We're never on our own. And I'm just so grateful that you hold this beautiful space. And like you said, it's not just for those who need help, it's those for also who feel called to embody that feminine energy and to be in that space. What really came through for me strong was that, the mitochondrial DNA
Mm-hmm.
gets passed from mother, but it also gets
Mm-hmm.
passed to daughters. It also gets passed to sons. So I recognize that you hold space. Do you hold space just for women or is it for men as well?
Usually it's for women.
Women.
Usually women tend to be the ones to come.
Yes.
Not that men, aren't welcome, but I think if I were to do something for men, it would just be for men,
Yeah.
just for the men together. For this particular one is for women.
Beautiful.
And I do and have had male clients
Mhm.
before, but my energy just seems to attract more women than men. So, it's
Absolutely.
whoever needs me, I guess.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Yeah, I wanted to ask that question because I get asked all the time by men. You're always talking about women, and that's a beautiful thing, and they want to uplift and support that. But they're like, what about us? We don't ask for help, but like we need it too. And so I always like to ask, and I have a feeling that there are people out there who could really use and benefit from your support. So it's beautiful that you're open to, but this
Mhm.
container is specifically for women. So thank you. And I just want to say to the men out there who are feeling called to step in and to do this ancestral healing and to take personal responsibility and to really own the transition that's happening in yourself and in the world. There's always people that are supporting, reach in for help. It's really important that you prioritize first and foremost that vulnerability, being able to own that vulnerability to say, well, you know what, I could use some support. It is that cutting edge of your next level of your transformation. And so, if you are feeling like you're alone, I want to remind you that you're never alone, that there are always people out here doing this work that are here to support you, but you have to get out of your own way to actually ask for help,
Yeah.
to reach in, to book a free call, to enter a container, to go into a group. I know for me, I think my
Mhm.
energy calls me to create containers and group spaces for women because we're more sort of that tribal, but the one-on-one space is really supportive for men, for me personally. And that's kind of the energy
Mhm.
that's being called for me. But there are so many people that are doing men's groups and where you can
Right.
go in brotherhood and really
Yes.
show up vulnerably. And I think there's a massive transition, I think, from the last generation, like my dad's age to kind of our age is where we're starting to look at like that, oh, you got to show up and be tough and be a man and not have emotions and all these things. And some of my current clients who are
Yeah.
men, they're really entering into that space of like, oh, it's actually not about
Right.
not feeling our emotions. We actually are so much stronger when we show up for ourselves first and foremost, but also our kids and our partners to say, this is something that's happening within me and to ask to be held. It's such a beautiful thing. And it is so rare. And so I just that came through to support men also and to say that
Yeah.
you're not alone, and there is space for you too, and it's
Mhm.
just finding that space that really feels resonant and supportive.
Mhm.
But Gayla, this is going to be, it is already such a massive
Yes.
shift in the way that we show up, and I'm just so
Mhm.
grateful for the spaces that you've created for this shift to happen and the way that you show up for yourself in so much honor and grace. And thank you for your grace to, be willing to shift the podcast. That was kind of how this whole conversation started as we had it scheduled for yesterday. And, I could have guilted and shamed myself and said, no, it's scheduled. Therefore, I have to be strict and I have to stick to the schedule and I have to show up regardless of how I'm feeling. But I know in our relationship, and I know that in my calling forward as well, I have to first and foremost honor myself. And so thank you for being someone who can receive that and who can actually be flexible and be
Oh yeah.
supportive of, yes, I want you to show up as your best self when we do this thing. And I think as humans, we can have a little bit more grace with each other. So whoever's listening that really loves to have
Mhm.
control and loves to have things scheduled and loves to know what everyone's doing, I grew up with that kind of helicopter parenting, and there's not a lot of space to breathe in that container.
Mhm.
And so I'm calling forward the people who are the mothers that feel like maybe they could really benefit from this space of like how to become a softer, more graceful, more gentle, more compassionate mother. But also the children of parents who maybe didn't have that nurturing and that supportive sort of container for compassion so that we can learn how to be compassionate to ourselves and have grace with ourselves and really move into this space of honoring ourselves first and foremost, so that we can actually show up in power for others is really
Mm-hmm.
what comes through so powerfully.
Yeah.
I would love to ask you too about human design on our next podcast. I feel like we have to have a second series on this, because
Yes.
human design is such a powerful thing. You said when I realized my own energy, I was able to show up
Mm-hmm.
differently. And so I really, in the future episode, I would love to dig into human design and
Sure.
what that means and energies and, you know, how we actually show up so much more powerfully when we own our own energetic system. Um, but I'm just realizing that time just flew.
It does. That's yeah. I mean, that's what happens when you're in fun, engaging conversation or in, time. I don't even know what time it is. Oh yeah, good. Yeah. We've been hanging out for almost an hour. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much. Thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for, answering the calling to create these containers. If you're
Mm-hmm.
listening and if you're out there and if you feel called to be held, I'm going to call you forward into your growth edge to not just feel that like, oh, I could really use this. I'm going to call you in to actually book a call, book a session, book
Yeah.
a container, get into these workshops,
Mm-hmm.
pour into yourself, ask for help, show up for yourself, and be the change that's being asked of you so that you can show up, number one, for yourself, but number two, for all of the people in your circle, in your system, in your container, in your community. We
That's right.
must pour into ourselves first. So
Yeah.
take
It
that
only
step.
takes one.
It
Takes
only
one.
takes one. Yeah.
Takes
Take
one
that
to get
step.
started.
That's right. Don't stay spinning in your wondering. Take the step, reach out today, book the call, do the thing. Do the thing because it is with us that it starts and ends that inspired, surrendered, aligned action. Gayla, thank you so much. Thank you for being my spirit sister in this work. Thank you for showing up in yourself as a physician in a way that is juicy and nurturing for you and the people you're meant to touch. And just thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank
everything.
you. Thank you for allowing me to be here and to walk in a different light, a new path. I think this is where we will be spending more time. And if someone has something y'all want us to talk about, let us know because I know
Absolutely.
I'll be more than happy to speak to what the audience needs.
Absolutely.
And where you're following or the people that are hanging out with me, what do y'all want us to talk about? What is it
Right.
that you would love to explore more and things like that. I'm always available. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gayla. Thank you.
Bye everybody.